Hello everyone, I have been tagged by Johanna Stormblessed to do the fantasy character tropes tag, where there's all the common character tropes and I assign a book to it. Let's get into it. So the first trope is The Chosen One, and this is the book that I recommend to everyone, like to the most people. And this question would have been a lot easier a couple years ago, but I think in what books I recommend, I'm less focused on the same series now. But that being said, I still think it's The Final Empire by Mr. Brandon Sanderson. The only I recommend this less now is not only do I have more options, but most people I talk to have read it now. But if there's someone who is just getting into fantasy, this is usually my go-to. Hey, try this. It's just really good. It has like really high mass appeal, and I just really like the series. It's pretty easy to get into. It's a similar length that you'll see a lot in fantasy, but it's not like ridiculously long, and it's just really good. So this is probably still first. I do recommend other series a lot, though. I recommend Dresden a lot. I recommend everything by Jim Butcher in general a lot. I recommend other Cosmere stuff a lot. If someone wants something darker, I'll recommend The First Law quite a lot. Robin Hobb quite a lot. Wheel of Time, Rage of Dragons, Lies of Locke Lamora. So I do recommend a lot of series, but I still think this is the book I recommend more than any other. Maybe The Emperor's Soul lately, because I actually think it's an even better kickoff to the Cosmere just because it's so short. But that would maybe be like in the last 2 months. But if you look at over the last 5 years, this is the book I've recommended the most by a pretty large margin. And I don't think anything's going to catch it that much, even if I recommend it a lot less frequently. Not because my opinion of it is lowered, but just because it has more competition now. So, the second trope to pick a book to is The Secret Heir, which is a book that vastly exceeded my expectations. And for this, I have to pick Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. It might be because it was recent, but I was expecting it to be good. Ended up being my favorite book ever. It's kind of self-explanatory why I'm picking this, I think. It's just, I had high expectations for it, but I was kind of just like, yeah, whatever. I'm more interested in Fitz's stuff, but now I'm more interested in live ship stuff. So this is definitely it's a lot better than I was expecting it to be, and I was expecting it to be pretty good. This was a no-brainer pick for this. This vastly exceeded my expectations, and I imagine if you ask me that first question in a couple years, the answer might be Realm of the Elderlings. Although probably not, just because it's such a long series and it's slow paced. But damn, this exceeded my expectations and was good. Obviously, I have a spoiler-free review of it where I was somewhat positive on it. Next up is The Evil Overlord, which is a book that fell flat for me, or I thought was poorly executed, and there were a few I could pick for this, obviously, but I went with one that was one of the most disappointing ones I've read as well, and The Bloodmere by Brent Weeks. If you've talked to me on Discord, or saw my bottom books of the year list, you know how I feel about this book. I was incredibly disappointed and angry at it, especially since I love book 3 even more than book 2, which I like more than book 1. And then this book single-handedly has made me afraid of people when they recommend a book because it's unpredictable. Because this is unpredictable because it doesn't make any goddamn sense. And it's just like, hey, let's twist everything. Everything is a twist. It's all a lie. Every other chapter. Oh, This is also fitting because the Evil Overlord might be my least favorite trope in general, just because I find a lot of the time the Evil Overlord's personality tends to be that they're evil. But this was such a disappointment. Like, this is expectation subversions just, like, gone squared to the power of 10. Where it's just, it seems like he just wanted to surprise me every chapter. But getting surprised every chapter is just stupid. Anyway. Also, somehow the book after it made it even worse, because it kind of made a lot of the things that seemed important in this less important. And also, there's so many twists in this that it sometimes feel like the author has forgotten that some of the twists, where it's like, some of the twists are just never acknowledged again. It's, this was brutal. The farther, I already didn't like it when I read it, and the farther I get away from it, the more angry I get. Where I had this on my bottom book list that I liked it more than Best Served Cold, and no, I don't. No, it should have been lower. I had it 4, it should have been 3. The series had so much potential, man. It kills me to put this on here, but man, it deserves it. This fell very, very flat on me and turned what would have been, like, not one of my favorite series, but a series I definitely liked, into one I don't really recommend to anyone. So, that sucks. And next up is a trope I like way more than the Evil Overlord, and it is the Reluctant Hero, which is a book I haven't read, and I'm not sure if I wanted to, and I kind of have 3 for this, and the first one is actually I have some I don't own, and that's the rest of Stephen King's books, not sure. And then Fire and Blood, I actually probably shouldn't have here. I'm almost certainly going to read Fire and Blood, but I really don't know if I'm going to like it or not. And I'm definitely not reading it soon. I'm waiting for a Winds of Winter release date before I go into this. The other one is just one I'm intimidated by, which is this little book. You might have heard of it. It's called The Silmarillion. I have not read this. I think I'm going to read it in 2022. Maybe. I have to muster the courage to read this. I'm the reluctant hero when it comes to reading The Silmarillion. That's obviously the point of this question, is that... But, I don't know. It's obviously a pretty intimidating book. And we'll see. But the actual one, this one I'm going to read. So these two have been lies. The one I'm actually the most unsure about is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. And it's just, no one seems to be super enthusiastic about this. Like, I've read Vicious by V.E. Schwab, and I liked Vicious. Vicious was good. I didn't love Vicious, but I liked Vicious. But it seems like most people say that most people seem to have this ranked below Vicious. So, I don't know. Like, the premise sounds interesting, but there's just so little enthusiasm about the series, even from, like, V.E. Schwab fans. So, if you're a V.E. Schwab fan and love this series, I want to hear about it in the comments to hopefully motivate me to read this. Like, I don't know, there's nothing about it that makes me think I wouldn't like it, other than just no one seems to love it. Anyway, so that's the real pick for this, is A Darker Shade of Magic. I like the covers, and I own them. But I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. I have a lot of Reluctant Heroes, because I have another one, and that's everything Dune after God Emperor. I'm definitely going to read to God Emperor this year. And then I don't know if I'm going to stop at God Emperor or continue on. I'm going to play that one by ear. It's funny, at first when I saw this, I felt like this was the hardest one to come up with one, and now I can't choose between, like, 4. I also wanted to put over Prince of Fools by Mark Lawrence, which I own because I got it for $1 at a used bookstore, but I've been kind of on Book of the Ancestor. But I've got a lot of these. These are the main ones. Whatever. So, the second to last trope is the Lucky Novice, which is a debut novel that I really loved, and I don't think I'm going to surprise a single person with this who's talked to me at all on Discord, and it's going to, of course, be The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. I love the ever-loving crap out of this book. I've already read it twice. I'll probably read it another time when the next book comes out eventually. Fires of Vengeance is just as good. It's, like, I really like the protagonist, Tao. I think the side characters do, like, feel with people. He's got really good relationships. Pacing is incredible. He's got the best fight scenes I've read. The world is really interesting and unique. I think it's got some interesting morality, especially in book 2. Book 1 isn't particularly interesting for the morality, but book 2, I think, in terms of like right and wrong, poses some really interesting questions. Book 1 poses some, just not nearly as well as book 2. But I love the ever-loving crap out of this series. I still can't believe this is a debut novel. Like, if Evan Winter keeps improving, he could be just one of my... I mean, he already is one of my favorite authors. Yeah, I love this book. I have a review on the channel, but has bad sound quality. But especially if you like action-packed books, this isn't like... This does have, like, training scenes. It isn't like, when people say fast-paced, that doesn't mean it's all action. It means it's a very tight story. Like, there is no fluff in this book. But I like that even though there's a lot of action, pretty much, I think every action scene also adds something to the story. It's not just, like, the way the people are hitting each other with swords is really cool. And the action, they never felt too long. So, love this book. Second one I like basically as much. Still can't believe it's a debut novel, and the covers on it are so nice. I think, this is another one where when it's a completed series, I could see this being one of my most recommended books to start people for fantasy. Right now, the only thing stopping me is Mistborn is complete. This isn't. But that'll be changed pretty soon. And the next one is The Mentor, a book that was formative in my life. And this one was harder than the others, because I didn't really know how far back to go. Technically, the first fantasy I read would be Harry Potter or Percy Jackson, but then I didn't really start reading... Like, there was a gap of, like, not reading necessarily the majority fantasy, and then I read The Inheritance Cycle a while later, but... It's not like I think about what happened in the Inheritance Cycle at all anymore. And then The Final Empire was kind of the first fantasy series I read that I still think is on like one of my favorite series today. But I went more recent, and this was the book that kind of got me reading new books. For a long time, in my teens and like in high school, I did a lot of rereading of my favorites, which is why I've read Codex Alera like 6 times, Dresden 3 to 10 times, Mistborn 6 or 7 times, and Stormlight 6 or 7 times, Song of Ice and Fire a couple times, Kingkiller Chronicles a couple times, even though now it's not even one of my favorite series, but it was one of the series I read. This is the book that kind of kickstarted me into reading a lot of new series and new stuff, rapid fire, and it is Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, and The Wheel of Time in general, which... After reading this, the amount of new stuff I read shot up from, like, very little to a huge amount. Which means I don't get to reread as much anymore, which is a bit sad, but whatever. So I decided to go with The Eye of the World. I think even though it's more recent, I think in terms of how it's affected my reading, it's probably had a bigger impact than the others. Maybe The Final Empire, because that's what really got me into, like, alright, my favorite genre for sure is fantasy. Before that, I don't think I was 100% sure. But reading The Final Empire got me to read books by Brandon Sanderson a lot, and, like, a couple others. Reading The Eye of the World is what really kickstarted me reading, like, a large amount of fantasy with quite a bit of variety, so I decided to go with The Eye of the World, which also probably has my favorite mentor character in it, in Moiraine, so that works out quite nicely. And the last book is the last trope is The Animal Companion, which is a book that made you smile, or a book that emotionally wrecked you. And for this, I could have picked quite a few. I decided I'm going to pick a book that did both. I'm not going to do one or the other. I was really tempted to do one from the Farseer trilogy for ironic reasons, the best reasons, but I think the book that fits that the best of both, I forget the exact phrasing used, a book that broke my heart and made me smile is, I guess this is also ironic reasons, because it has an animal on the cover. Toll the Hounds by Stephen Erickson, book 8 in Malazan Book of the Fallen, and my favorite book in the series. obviously I can't talk about specifically, but this is really the Malazan book that I would say both broke my heart and made me smile the most, and it's my pick in general. If you've read the book, and unless you're some of the people who didn't like it, but if you're among the people who this book really worked for, you know why I picked it. But I could have picked a lot of books for this. I could have picked half the Dresden books, every Robin Hobb book, half the Stormlight books, half the Cosmere books in general. Most really good books I've read hit the full range of emotions, but Sword of Kaigen easily could have picked. Most of the John Gwynne books. Really, I could have picked a lot for this. This is probably the one where I could have picked the most books. We're basically like this shelf, which is where most of my top series are, although I might need to find a way to put Realm of the Elderlings over there. Most of the books on this shelf could go on this category, but I decided this the most goes on that category. And it's my favorite Malazan book, and just fantastic in general. So I'm not good at coming up with people to tag. So I'm gonna tag Bookborn, who has a wonderful channel, and I'm tagging a bit out of my way here, but there you go, Bookborn, you've been tagged. I think she'll have really good answers for this. I'll tag Madison Goodyear again. Does quite a few tags. Also, I tend to like her answers quite a bit. For the last tag I did, Pete tagged me, so I'm gonna do the Uno reverse card and tag Pete. Maybe someone already tagged Pete. Yeah, because Pete is in the Cosmere Unbounded, so Pete already got tagged. Damn. I've already tagged OG Garbage Tea and Chase too many times, maybe. I don't know. You can do it if you want. If you're watching this, you can do it. I don't know. Don't let me tell you how to live your life. Nothing's stopping you. Just everyone, if you do it, give me credit. Just everyone who does it, just link my channel, okay? Thank you.